Well, hello everybody. Updating you on the storm situation we have going on here across the region. A pretty volatile situation to our south where we're seeing showers and storms crossing into Iowa, western Iowa, and then some thunderstorms up towards Sioux Falls. So that's where the bulk of the activity is right now, and it's all heading to the north and east. Behind me, you can see a good synopsis of this storm system. I flip down my computer, just the incredibly looking storm here, very tightly wound, almost looks like a tropical storm here, moving across parts of the plains into Iowa and eventually up through Minnesota. Fast moving storm system overall too. So this storm, if you've been following some of the news or social media through the day, was creating 100-mile-per-hour winds in Colorado. And those are winds separate from any severe thunderstorms. So we're going to talk about the two parts of our wind story here for this evening and overnight. The big thing is going to be severe weather first for some areas, and then high winds that many of us will see as a result of the storm system itself, separate from the thunderstorms, but just the strong pressure gradient because of the huge temperature contrast set up for this time of year. So we do have those storms moving into Iowa right now. You can see that what we've got are several tornado warnings at the moment from Sioux Falls, Sioux City down to all across western Iowa through Omaha, and all this is tracking to the northeast very quickly. These storms are moving, some of them at times anywhere from 70 to 100 miles an hour, and that's one of the main concerns with this system is that despite not having all the best severe weather parameters, we are actually seeing the winds aloft just a few thousand feet so strong that what's happening is any of these storms could push some of that wind down to the surface and create some issues. Here's the setup right now. We've got temperatures that are in the low 50s here across southern Minnesota, 52 in the Twin Cities, low 60s across the southern part of Minnesota. And then temperatures are below freezing as you head up towards Grand Forks, 28 degrees there. So a big temperature contrast across the area, and that is creating that huge pressure gradient that's going to create the strong winds overnight tonight. So that's one of the things that we're going to be watching at that point is the wind gusts after the possible storms that are going to be moving in, because those wind gusts are going to be anywhere from 50 to 65 miles per hour as the system winds in. So initially, the threat is going to be from those severe thunderstorm wind gusts that could be over 70 miles an hour, and then it's going to come from areas that are moving in from the pressure gradient with the actual low pressure system itself. So that's what we're going to be watching there. And this whole line is bowing to the north and east. So dew points as well. A lot of moisture for this time of year. You've probably been outside and you think, wow, it feels humid, and it is. Dew points are in the 50s all across southern Minnesota. In fact, upper 50s even in far southern Minnesota, and that's enough. It doesn't have to be hot, super hot and humid to see severe thunderstorms or tornadoes. It just needs to be enough, and we do definitely have enough. So this is a look at that system, as I mentioned, really winding up, and we got that line of storms all the way from Sioux Falls down into Kansas and even northern Oklahoma, and just a very tightly wound system. And I'm going to put the pressure lines on here, and you can see just how tight the pressure gradient is, and this is why we're seeing those strong winds. When you see those yellow lines, those isobars, the lines of constant pressure bunched up like that, that's a problem. That's creating some very strong winds, especially on the back side of this low, and then also the south side of the low. That's where the lines are bunched up together. So we're not seeing the wind yet here, but we could see, again, some of those severe wind gusts from the storms initially, and then the wind that will come in behind it. There'll be a couple of hours in between. I know some people said they've had 9 o'clock flights or something like that. There'll probably be a lull, and then at least in the Twin Cities, that's when the winds will pick up, will be by about midnight or so tonight. So we still have that moderate risk of severe weather. This is clipping southeastern Minnesota into much of Iowa, the Twin Cities within the slight risk area. It's going to be a pretty sharp cutoff between areas that have the potential for severe weather and areas that don't. And there have already been a number of reports of wind, that's the blue dots here, and tornado reports across Nebraska. We have several of them that have been across that area. So already this system has produced some tornadic activity, and we're just going to continue to watch and see how much more it does here as it moves east. And just refresh the map, and you can see there have been a couple more reports even recently now into northwestern Iowa, which if we put on the radar, this is what we're looking at there. You can see several overlapping tornado warnings. It's hard for the Weather Service or anybody in this situation to keep up because these storms are moving so fast that one warning doesn't expire before you send out the next one as things move in. I'm going to put on some of the storm tracks here so we can see just how fast some of these storms are moving, because it's going to be pretty incredible, I think, speeds here as you look at this. Yeah, 51 knots this storm is moving, which is going to be over 60 miles an hour. And then this northern end of the line still moving at 53 knots. That's 60, 65 miles an hour. So the entire line is moving at quite the clip. And so if we just even do a little simple math there, you got 185 miles moving at 60 miles an hour. In a few hours, these storms get here. So that's why the timing is anywhere between 7 and 9 o'clock in the Twin Cities that we see those storms get to this area, just because they're moving so fast. And again, any one of those storms at any moment could push down the wind. We've been seeing that across Nebraska and Kansas, that some of these thunderstorms are able to take advantage of those winds aloft, which are roaring at anywhere from 70 to 90 miles an hour as you head up into the middle and upper layers of the atmosphere. So we'll put on that and show you what we're looking at here. So these are winds at about 4,000 feet up. And you can see right now those winds here across Iowa, Nebraska, where it's the strongest right now. Those winds are anywhere from 60 to 80 miles per hour right now. So that's what's pushing these storms. The winds 4,000 feet up are moving pretty much straight south to north. So that's what's pushing the whole line towards us. And you can see what happens over time here is those high winds at 4,000 feet move into southern Minnesota. So this is 7 o'clock this evening. Now we see those strong winds here, 60 to 70 mile per hour winds, 4,000 feet up, and even close to 90 miles an hour in southern Iowa. Those are the winds pushing into the storm. And again, just a few thousand feet up. It's almost hard to imagine that less than a mile up, the winds are roaring consistently. These aren't gusts, but consistently at those speeds. And then as the low passes, that whole low-level jet will move east after about 10 o'clock or so. But then we see the strong surface winds kick in, and that's what's going to be a problem later on tonight. So we'll get into some of the severe weather in a second, but I want to show you the potential for some of those wind speeds here as we head into the evening and overnight hours, because those are going to be substantial. So right now, again, as I mentioned, the winds aren't too bad. The biggest threat we're looking at are some of the severe wind gusts from those storms initially, from whatever can hold together. Now, the atmosphere is less conducive to severe weather in Minnesota than it is across Iowa and Nebraska right now. That is the case. But with these high winds aloft, it may not matter. We've got just enough humidity where some of those storms could sustain themselves. So this is some of those wind gusts. This is 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. This is when the line could be pretty intense. This short-term model we use, the HRRR, still creating severe wind gusts here of 60 to 70 miles an hour in southeastern Minnesota. So I do think the biggest threat of those thunderstorm wind gusts will stay just south of the Twin Cities, but it will be close. In southeastern Minnesota, we'll have that chance. And then as we head later into the evening, you see the winds kick into the west. These aren't from the thunderstorms, but from that crazy pressure gradient to the west. Notice the wind speeds here along the western parts of the Minnesota River, 60 to 65 miles an hour, and that moves into the Twin Cities here. We're talking about wind gusts. This is 2 a.m. of 60 miles per hour. So we're going to have some just crazy winds as we head into the overnights. It's going to be one of those nights where you'll hear the branches swaying, scratching the window or whatever out there. And I think because the ground is so soggy out there, because it never froze, we just melted a foot's worth of snow in 5 days, which is crazy in itself. The ground is just soggy, especially those big pine trees. They act like kites in this weather, and that could be a source of trees collapsing overnight. And of course, if it lands on a power line, you're in all sorts of trouble. So let's take a look at some of the severe weather parameters right now. Where those are all high are where the storms are right now. Eastern Nebraska into western Iowa. So at the moment, those severe parameters aren't impressive in Minnesota, but remember, all this is moving in from the south at the surface and aloft up to 4,000 to 9,000 feet. So the whole bottom 2 miles of the atmosphere is literally getting that air mass, those parameters sort of advected in here. And so that's why we're going to see some of those parameters increase across southern Minnesota. So for example, if we put on the supercell index right now, it's high across eastern Nebraska, western Iowa. This takes into account instability, wind shear in the atmosphere that can help organize storms. But if we look at the models and show you what happens over time with that supercell index, so this is right now, you can see it is strongest across Iowa, western Iowa, and then that area moves into southeastern Minnesota. Not as strong, but there are still some pretty high parameters, still some instability. This is looking at that potential energy for thunderstorms, what we call CAPE, convective available potential energy, just a fancy term for saying energy available for thunderstorms to develop and become severe. And while it is much higher, of course, across Nebraska and Iowa, up to about 1,000 joules is what we measure energy in, it does get up to 400 or 500 for parts of southern Minnesota, which again is enough to sustain some of these storms. You can see the Twin Cities really is on the edge of this. So this is 7 o'clock. We are on the edge of that thunderstorm instability. Another parameter we look at is a tornado parameter that looks at the combination of the supercell index, instability, shear, low-level shear, all sorts of parameters, and gives us an indication of where's the best chance of seeing tornadoes develop, especially significant ones. And that's high across Iowa, where we're seeing the tornado warnings right now. But again, it moves into southern Minnesota to a lesser degree, a lesser magnitude, but still enough where we will have to watch for a couple of brief spin-ups potentially in southern Minnesota because of this. Just a ton of wind shear. Everything that is in that reddish pink color, that's a lot of wind shear that's moving in, and that's a result of these super high winds aloft. You get shear from either winds moving in different directions as you go up, or winds moving at much higher speeds as you go up. And we literally have winds at the surface of 20 miles an hour, but you go up and it's 80 to 90 miles an hour right now. So that creates a lot of shear, horizontal rotation that then can be pushed vertical and spin up a storm and organize it into something like a supercell. So again, these are where the storms are right now, moving into Iowa and eastern or western Iowa, and then eventually here southern Minnesota, and moving towards the Twin Cities. So I'm going to put on our forecast radar here and show you some of the timing of what we're expecting here, so you can anticipate that. So here's where we are right now, about 4 or 5 o'clock. We have had a few showers out there that are just regular showers out ahead of those thunderstorms. So these aren't the thunderstorms just yet. There was even actually a little bit of lightning and thunder north of Mankato within the last hour or so. And again, this isn't the main action. Note the storms, they're starting to move into southwestern Minnesota. We have that line of storms in southwestern Minnesota, whatever holds together. This is 6 o'clock, so an hour from now, and then moving towards the Twin Cities on our doorstep at about 7 o'clock is when we'll see that. And then 8 o'clock, the storms are over us. So it looks like the best timing, this has been pretty consistent through the day. It looks like right around 8 o'clock, but anywhere in between that 7 to 9 p.m. time frame is when we'll have that line of storms moving through the Twin Cities. That's when we have the possibility of some of those severe wind gusts, though again, the best chance is just to the southeast, and then the line continues to the northeast. And then note the snow moving in by 10 o'clock in western and northern Minnesota. That largely stays north and west of us, so don't expect to see snow here in the Twin Cities. If you're a snow lover, it looks like we're not going to see much of anything out of this system as far as that goes. So we'll take one last look here at where the storms are at present, which is moving across western Iowa very quickly. As we mentioned, these storms are all moving northeast at 60 to 70 miles an hour in some cases, just a crazy rapid development. So they are on track to be here, as I mentioned, by about 7:30, 8 o'clock, just even by doing the math and measuring the distance and timing it out, that's when that would happen. So that's the situation. I will come back on live here as the storms approach the metro here, probably sometime between 7 and 8 o'clock. And of course, you can continue to follow me for more updates on my social media, Facebook and Twitter. And also be sure to head to bringmethenews.com. Tom Novak, my colleague there, has an updated situation video there on what's going on right now. And yeah, we're covering it from all sorts of fronts, and just everybody stay safe and definitely be aware here over the next few hours as those storms get closer to Minnesota.